Hi, I'm Kathleen Murf+E, and welcome to Murf+E Unfiltered Zero BS Biz Talk. I'm here today with my co-host, Eliot Grossman. How are you, Eliot?
I'm doing great, Murph. How you doing?
Excellent. I'm doing well, thank you. The irony of this topic today is hilarious to me because we're going to be talking about adaptability and adaptability as a superpower. I think it's taken us probably 4 weeks of being adaptable to get to this point to record this episode, which is fitting, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Well, we both are really busy in what we do, professionally and personally, and so we had to cancel, move things around, but here we are. We adapted to the situation, and here we are.
Exactly, and of course we have to thank Pete for that as well, our
producer.
Pete's the best. Yes, he is, exactly. So let me start by launching into the overview about this particular topic, because I'm sure people, just based on the word itself, can get a sense for what it means. But we're going to dive into this and talk about what it really means in both the workforce and in life, if you will. And here we go. There are certain traits which have a higher value than others. Being adaptable in both the workplace and in life is one of them. Given the choice, I would always hire someone or want to spend time with someone who had the trait over someone who hasn't or doesn't have this particular trait. Are you adaptable? Are you adaptable?
Well, I don't think we have a choice. Honestly, you say we have a choice. I don't think there is a choice.
No.
Professionally or personally, and we'll talk about that more as we go on.
Exactly. So right now, obviously, given the fact that we're living in the era of COVID, I happened to write this particular topic back in early March. And it was at a time when it was unclear as to really where we're going direction-wise with COVID. But I had a sense that we weren't heading in the direction that anyone wanted us to be heading in.
Sure.
And then, sure enough, a couple weeks later, we went into lockdown. We're in Massachusetts, so they were pretty early compared to some of the other places in the country in terms of putting us on a lockdown and restricting us and such. So I quickly understood that there was going to be the need to be adaptable and flexible, if you will. And I thought, gosh, you know, if there's ever a time I'm going to need to enact a superpower, this is probably one of those times, right?
Sure.
So adaptability is one of those superpowers. And I think about it from the perspective, can it be taught? We're going to talk a little bit about that. And then I think about it from the perspective of what are some of the characteristics of somebody that is adaptable. And I think about them as being someone who's easygoing, they're easy to get along with, they are often in a good mood, they also happen to be willing to try new things, go to new places, and meet new people, if you will. And so let's launch into this, and let's start with a question in terms of what would you characterize as someone who's adaptable, and do you yourself consider yourself to be adaptable?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're living in this time of the craziest time, right?
Yes.
I mean, I always joke at our advanced age, we've dealt with a lot in our life.
Yes.
But this is the craziest of times that I've ever dealt with. Starting with, you know, you talked about the lockdown and,
right.
and how do we go from being in person and hugging people and doing all the things that we do, shaking hands professionally, which we don't do anymore.
Right, or smiling at someone without knowing whether they're smiling or not. Because
are they
right.
smiling back? Sure.
Yeah.
So 2 words come to mind: open-minded. And you know, we can talk about what you want. This is just different.
It is.
Both personally and professionally. And you have to be open-minded enough, and we'll talk about this more as we go on, to I keep saying adapt, but we've talked about this for a long time. This is, in my opinion, I always talk about your subjects sometimes are challenging for me.
Sure.
This is the easiest
Oh, good. I'm
which.
glad. I needed to tee up an easy one
You know,
for you.
yeah, I mean, listen, life is a challenge. Life is hard, but if you go into life in a closed-minded situation, personally or professionally, you're going to fail. You're going to fail, and we don't have very few times you get second, third, and fourth chances personally and professionally with people because they are closed-minded.
Right. So talk a little bit more about that, just in terms of some of the times and situations where you've had to be adaptable, both perhaps at work and at home, because
Sure.
it impacts everything.
Of course
what
it
we're
does. So
dealing with right now.
professionally, you talked about can it be taught? I
Yes.
absolutely believe being adaptability can be taught.
Good.
It's not one of the traits or characteristics that you're born with. I absolutely believe it. Professionally, you better learn to adapt or you're going to be gone. You know, because whether you're, let's just say you were a manager, a vice president position, all of a sudden, you know, they sign your walking papers, right?
Or a CEO.
Or a CEO, and they sign your walking papers and you're out the door. And then you have to resort back into the workforce.
That's right.
Like most of us do.
That's
you
right.
know, unfortunately, a lot of us have been shown the door, if you will. And it's not fun. And you need to go into your next role saying, man, I got to realize I need to change a little bit more when I go into my next role, because if I'm going to go from a management role into a sales role, it's not my way of the highway anymore, and not that it was to begin with, because you want to be open-minded enough to be able to adapt and change with your team.
Right.
But now you need to adapt and change to how the manager, how the vice president, how they like to do things.
That's
so,
right.
you know, and you know, personally, man, you better adapt.
Yeah,
That's just,
I agree.
Everybody's different. Stay open-minded. We talked about this in one of our previous episodes. Sure.
we did.
I don't care what you look like, who you are, we're all the same.
We're
Be
all the same.
open-minded.
Absolutely.
Tell me about you.
So for me, I agree also that adaptability is something that can be learned, and you can model that behavior for other people to help them to be more adaptable. That's for sure. And so I think that those people that tend not to be maybe as adaptable may in fact just be stubborn and unwilling for whatever reason to go along with being more adaptable. They don't realize that at some point that's not going to serve them very well. So that's an unfortunate thing. I myself personally consider myself to be quite an adaptable person. I've had to be just in the nature of the career choice that I was in for 25 years, which was corporate tech marketing. I changed jobs probably more frequently than most people in other industries, but that was the nature of our industry, where it was pretty common to do that. 90, I think, 8% of the companies that I work for had been acquired. So we were always going through mergers and acquisitions.
Sure.
So when you got acquired by another company, chances are you're on the street looking for another job. So you learned very quickly that you needed to adapt. And so whether that was a good thing or not, I think it's a good thing. It wasn't a choice. So you had to be okay with it. And I think,
And real quick, Murph,
Yes.
if you were one of the fortunate ones, when your company does get acquired,
yes,
and they say, hey, Kathy Murphy is great at what she does, we need to keep her on the team, and then you go into the company that acquired you,
yes.
and it's quite different than how you did things previously, you better adapt quickly.
Sure, because the fact that you may have been retained to stay on that team doesn't necessarily mean that it's the same old game that you've been playing all along. You're absolutely right. If anything, you've got to go into overdrive with your adaptability, because there's going to be a new culture. Chances are you probably have a new boss, a new team. I mean, everything's switched up again.
Not just professionally, but personally. Now all of a sudden you're thrown in to a brand new team, and you aren't in the same comfortability.
No.
You don't have the same comfortability you had with your old team. You knew everybody in the company.
That's right.
And now you don't know anybody.
No,
So all of a sudden, who do I have lunch with? Who do I confide in, right? We were able
It's
to
true.
confide on each other when we worked together.
Right.
Who do I confide in? That's a huge thing.
It is.
So you don't go home and burden your significant other, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever it may be, with all the challenges every day. Oh man, this is hard, this is hard. Life is hard.
It is.
That is part of being able to adapt in those situations. And it is, you better be able to learn that, because it is something that can be taught.
It's very true. I'm going to talk about some examples, both at home and at work, just in terms of adaptability. One that probably many people can relate to is something that over the weekend I experienced from an adaptability perspective. Our family took in a new puppy, and this puppy is 8 weeks old. No, we took this puppy in a week early, so we had to be that much more flexible and adaptable with taking this puppy into our care. And what the person in my house whose puppy it really is, who is our daughter's, didn't necessarily realize is how much of a village it takes to care for this puppy. And she said to me this morning, she said, oh gosh, I'm so glad that there are a lot of people in our house right now that can help out with taking care of this puppy.
Right.
And so she's going through a very quick exercise of learning how to fast track being adaptable with trying to figure out how to work from home and have this new puppy on board, right? From a work perspective, I would say that, you know, I had to reconfigure my business to stage my coaching business with teams, both sports teams and business teams and individuals, to be 100% remote. No, I'm not alone, but the fact that I had to go through that myself and, you know, consult with other people to potentially help me make some of those decisions in terms of best practices for doing that was not easy. And I had to do that relatively quickly, and I had to, sure, at first, you know, consider, can I do this? And is that possible? And I reached out to some of my clients and said, can you test some of these things with me? Because I've never done these remotely before online. And I was fortunate enough to have some clients that were also adaptable to help me out in that case. And another example would be someone that I had hired at one point who was our second choice candidate. Now, this person was a second choice candidate because the first candidate turned us down.
Sure.
And was all set to start, and we were all ready to welcome them, onboard them and everything. And the day before that they're supposed to start, they said, sorry, not showing up. I took another offer. So we were scrambling and had to figure out, okay, well, do we go back to our second choice candidate? Yes. So we had some concessions to make with that person because they needed to be flexible to agree to our terms, which are a little bit different than the original terms of employment with this person, because they were second choice for a reason. They ended up being a phenomenal person.
As is normally the case.
Right? And the fact that they were so flexible and adaptable was really what made it that much more special. How about you? What's been your experience just in terms of in the workforce, having to be adaptable, particularly in a situation where you never anticipated that would be the case?
Sure. Well, I give you, we spoke about this right before the show. So my company has asked me to spend 2 weeks a month for the next 4 months in a different market, because in the Northeast, the weather doesn't allow for us to do what I do.
Sure.
And so it's a nice feather in my cap, but all of a sudden I go from knowing almost everybody in this territory and my comfortability and being able to get out and just enjoy making new friends in my territory, meeting them, enjoy the guys and the women that I work with, to a brand new market where the Northeast is very, as you know, it's provincial, right? We're different people up here, especially in the New England market. We are just
sometimes a little harder to get
sure,
to know,
so
but once you get to know us,
you get to know
best
us.
friends.
We're not quite as harsh and as tough as everybody thinks they are.
That's right.
So now I'm going to a market which is going to be quite different, and I don't know anybody. It's almost like you talked about being acquired by a new team.
Right.
I don't know anyone.
No.
So now I'm talking to folks that are in the market for my company, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, where do I go? What do I do? But I'm going to go down there without knowing anybody.
So basically starting from scratch.
Starting from scratch, and it's a nice promotion, nice, as I said, feather in my cap. However, it's going to be a very big professional challenge, and I better adapt to how they do things down there.
That's right.
How they work with things in the marketplace, who are the big players, who are not. And so my adaptability needs to be like on point.
Yes.
Always.
Yes.
And I need to stay open-minded. And, people always say, man, you talk a lot. And I joke, but, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
That's right.
So listen more and talk less. And I better be able to go into this market and do that, or I won't have this opportunity next winter.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm really happy for you that you have that. So, like I often do, I've got tips for those people that may be challenged with wrapping their mind around the concept of being flexible and adaptable. So here we go. The first one is The next time someone asks you to help them, do so, and without any excuses. The next one is give other people an opportunity to be in the spotlight at work, or put them in the spotlight by being a spokesperson for how valuable their contributions are to your team. I really like that one especially. And then consider doing that task that others are always asking you on the team to do, but you always avoid doing. And surprise them and show them that you aren't always Captain No. I thought you might like that one.
Yeah, I do.
And then agree to meet in the middle. I mean, let's face it, we all have to compromise. It's just a part of life.
Sure.
And it doesn't matter what the topic is. And as long as it doesn't get you into trouble or harm others, there's always a way to find that middle ground. So I'd like you to talk about some of the other ways that you've personally leveraged others that maybe were struggling with being adaptable, because we've now both readily admitted that we've had lots of opportunities in our life to have to be adaptable, whether we were or not before is not in question. But there are certainly people that we've come across in life that clearly are not adaptable or haven't been. How have you helped these people?
So one thing I like to say, certainly professionally, I think it certainly flows into personally as well. You're not always going to be the smartest person in the room. So whether you work for a company, things happen, things change, and then you need to move on, or they ask you to move on, and you're going somewhere else, you may have known almost everything within the company that you were with. Now you don't know anything. So this gives you the opportunity to truly become a good listener. And by doing that, you're going to learn, right? We know if we don't talk as much and we listen more, we're going to learn.
That's right.
And learning becomes a huge asset and makes you much more valuable to the company. How quickly can you adapt to how they do things at the new company? We don't need somebody to, nowadays, everything is fast-paced.
Yes.
You do not get a 6 month to a year ramp-up time.
No.
You get it. If they're nice, they give you a week. But for the most part, I mean, you get a week to a month. But for the most part, you better ramp up. You have a number to hit, and let's go. And I know the same thing in the marketing world. You better quickly adapt. Yes, we want you to bring us really good ideas to our company, but this is how we do things. You're going to adapt, and by doing that, though, you do learn. You do learn, and it makes you much more valuable.
Absolutely. No, I love that.
What about you? Give me some more suggestions.
That's so true.
Help, I don't know, people become better understood in newer situations.
Exactly. So here's another one for you. Think about why you might not be adaptable. That's what I like to tell people. And is it because you're stubborn, perhaps? A lot of people may or may not admit that they are. I think the older they get, they're more apt to admit that they're stubborn. I find that people that are sub a certain decade, let's just say, find it harder to. I'm not going to call anybody out. I'm just saying sub a certain decade. You can figure out which one that is yourself. And then, do you think your reputation might be tarnished or improved with being more flexible? That's huge, because as we both know, if you are characterized or labeled as someone that's not flexible or adaptable, that can really hurt your opportunities going forward in life. And then perhaps you're afraid to fail, or worse, to succeed. And so I talk to people about this all the time, as you know, in my coaching business. And surprisingly, that's a remarkable thing that I hear, that people are just as, sometimes even more afraid to succeed.
Just going to say that.
And they'll
that happens
admit
more
it.
often than not. I bet you hear that more often than not. And I see it.
It does.
Don't be afraid to win.
That's right.
Everybody's always like, well, I don't mind failing. But they're afraid to win.
They're afraid to win, and oftentimes they'll do things that are self-sabotaging, which is really frustrating and just disheartening
that might be
for me
show
to
24.
see. It probably is a good suggestion. I like it. And then consider whether you've always been inflexible. Is this a label you want to have applied to you? And then consider someone you know who could be described as being adaptable. what are the reasons others would classify them that way? Think about that. And then can you try modeling or applying perhaps one or two of their qualities to how you go about your life or your work? And then it will take time and practice to become more flexible, as we both know. But just like it does when you begin to work out at the gym, it's the same concept. And with your personality, you know, it can be adapted. It is possible to adapt your personality. No one's personality is set in stone. I think that we all have opportunities to modify our personality in a good way.
Agreed.
I would say we don't want to modify our personality, certainly in the other direction.
Sure.
And then, have you seen a negative impact on someone that wasn't flexible?
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, absolutely. And I talk about this professionally. One thing we heard commonly, if I hired someone and then they get on the team in the first few weeks, it's easy, right?
Sure.
Take people out to lunch,
Yes.
meeting your team. It's
The
always
honeymoon
easy.
phase.
Right, the honeymoon phase. But then you get to know somebody. One comment I would hear all the time is, well, that's not how we've done things previously at my old company.
Sure.
That's not how I'm able to do things. And I think in this day and age, when we have our CRMs and different systems out there and software that's better, you know, tracking abilities, whether it's numbers or what's going on a daily basis. Again, it's not to babysit you. It's to help you, right?
That's right.
It's better to help you.
That's right.
Also to help us and the management team, the executive team, look at things a little differently. If you can't adapt to those situations, it quickly becomes like the negative check mark.
That's right.
This is bad, and
You don't want that.
you don't want it,
No.
and so it becomes a problem. I mean, I know you see it, and I bet you see it even more going back when you're coaching people.
I do, because oftentimes it comes down to the fact that, unfortunately, sometimes people just aren't as aware as we might expect them to be. And it really doesn't matter what age you are. Some people will go, you know, into their 30s and 40s, even their 50s, and still be unaware of really who they are. I like to use that example of for the first time, I'm putting a mirror up to show them really who they are.
Sure.
And sometimes they're surprised by that. And particularly if I see instances in the representation of them verbally telling me about instances that are describing themselves not being flexible,
Okay.
and having these aha moments for them to go, oh gosh, I didn't realize that was contributing to maybe this happening, and the repercussions of their behavior because they weren't adaptable. And
Sure.
then showing them, you know, through verbal representation, explaining how that would work. And so we've covered a lot of ground today, and I'm just thinking there are a couple of bonus examples that I want to bring up for people. Now, we've both interviewed lots of people in our life, and I actually have developed some questions that would be really helpful to people if they're interested in reaching out to me on my website or through, you know, emailing me to find out about questions that I ask to determine if somebody's an adaptable person or not. There are certain questions that can reveal some of those characteristics. So if they're interested in doing that, please reach out to me. They can also use this for fun socially as well. I mean, let's face it, I thankfully I'm not in the dating world, but if I was, I'd be using some of these questions to find out if somebody was flexible or not.
Fire away.
And I'm not going to reveal what they are. They gotta dig and find out what those questions are for me. So if they're really interested,
Yes.
they know how to reach me, and
That's
they
right.
can do so, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And so, you know, I think that this is a topic clearly that people can improve upon and be more flexible. And when they become, like you said, more open-minded to that type of thinking, there are just so many more possibilities that are going to open up for them. And
Yeah, I would say this is my last word. There's nothing better when you're interviewing someone or someone joins your team and you're part of it and they say, I never thought of doing it that way. That makes a lot of sense.
It does. And I'm open.
Correct. And I'm open
To hearing more.
hearing more, doing it your way, trying it your way.
That's right.
Wonderful words that you sit there and say, okay, the light bulb goes off. I said, that person needs to be on my team.
Exactly. So that's a wrap for us today. This is a fun topic. I hope that people are going to be able to benefit from this. So I just want to thank everybody today for joining us, and we'll see you the next time on Murf+E Unfiltered Zero BS Biz Talk. Thanks, Eliot, for being my co-host today, of course, as always.
Absolutely,
And
Murf.
good luck with your travels coming up.
Yep, thanks.
And happy Thanksgiving, everybody.